Next game we're talking about is Evergrace, which was nominated by SpongeBob SquareSign on iTunes.
Evergrace, what the hell was From Software thinking with this one?
Yeah, that's right. Developer for this one was From Software, as you said. It's published by AgeTech in the United States and From Software in Japan. It was released for the PlayStation 2. Earliest release date was April 27th, in the year 2000, in the nation of Japan. And now, you guys just go at it. I will amuse myself with this deck of pornographic playing cards.
I guess those who don't have working PS2 emulation probably weren't really bothered to fiddle this one much, but mostly GunHeart and I, to a lesser extent, chanced upon ourselves to explore just what this old slice of From history was about, from the guys who made Armored Core, and more famously the Dark Souls series. And we did rank Demon Souls not too long ago, as I recall. We placed it pretty high.
Wait, hold on. Kingsfield doesn't even,
Kingsfield.
warrant a mention? What the heck is this?
This is really just a very bad attempt at making adult person Kingsfield. This is like the weird, trendy, let's try to be Square Enix version of Kingsfield. I mean, it's pretty much all over it from the whole... For starters, it used the exact same power gauge as Kingsfield for your attacks. It's got... I think it's like the first game besides Armored Core to actually have the Moonlight, only since it's a physical sword in this game instead of arm blade on a robot, it actually looks like the damn thing.
Yeah, so gets credit for that. I mean, it's got swords and really fruity-looking armor, and
in fact, that armor is probably one of the more interesting things about it. It was actually considered one of the selling points at what feel it has. Like, okay, so on PC there had been RPGs before now where armor had shown up on your character model. Okay, I'm not as well versed in this as I am with console RPGs, but I can at least tell you that there were MMOs like Evergrace and such that for 3D games that had armor that showed up on your character. This was largely unheard of though for console-based role-playing games. So Evergrace was at least kind of new in that regard. There's just one problem here though, and that would be the fact that those like only one or two armor sets are actually worth anything, and most of them are joke sets.
Well, they use some of the... To take the game a little further, they use some of the armor as part of the game's puzzles. That's how specific this feature is. The game...
There are exactly like two puzzles in the game that require your armor to all be the same matching color. And that's about as far as they take that puzzle, unfortunately.
There's not much else they can really do with it at this point, because they don't really... The armor doesn't add much else. Like, you don't get any super bonuses for wearing it all at the same time. It's pretty basic.
It is your primary way you gain stats in the game. Just, again, the big problem with that is that there's like this one particular suit of armor that's just all around the best at increasing your stats.
Anyone want to tell me about the story of Evergrace?
I do have to say this much. This is probably AgeTech's worst localization of any From Software title. I mean, if you play like any Kingsfield or Armored Core, Project Phantasma aside, whatever story might have been there feels like it has been hidden behind dialogue that was translated out of context. There are characters that just drop off mid-sentence or say things with completely the wrong inflection.
And what we do have when you play the game is that it is you get to play as one of two characters, and you get to play both of them in the very short duration of the game, which is kind of novel. You play as Darius, the boy, and Sharia or something.
Charlene.
Charlia, right? Because there's Charlia. Sorry.
Charlene with an N.
L-E-N-E.
It did amaze me though. Like, from when I saw you play this game, GunHeart, this had to be like one of the shortest RPGs I've ever seen.
Yeah, it is almost insultingly short.
For better or worse, actually, let me roll off of that. Would you say its brevity actually works to its advantage?
Only in the sense that you'll suffer less.
Yep, yeah, I'm not sure how much we should sugarcoat it. Gunheart and I are big fans of From, him more so, actually, I'd say, but I am a really big fan of the Soulsborne series. But even we're not so, dumbstruck with fandom that we realize, mediocre to bad game when we see it, and this is one of From's biggest stinkers by and far. I mean, I don't even know where to start with how bad it is.
Well, let's take the combat, which had... Okay, in theory, it's not all that different from Kingsfield. So each weapon has, like... Well, actually, unlike Kingsfield, you have 2 attacks. One for if you attack while standing still, one if you're moving. But the problem is that since you have full range of movement instead of the tank controls, this means that pretty much all of the combat is just one up to the enemy, hit it, and run away.
Yeah, the combat is... Like, you probably get better combat out of Diablo. This is a very stiff, to say the least.
Oh, and this is one of those older PS2 games where they just had to show off those pressure-sensitive buttons. But, for starters, pressing lightly only changes the amount of power used and damage. Though you don't get light quick attacks or anything like that, it's the same animation each time, so really you're just better off pressing the button down as hard as you can, with one exception. The other really annoying game design quirk is that the game's currency, which you use to upgrade your gear and thus improve your stats, is awarded not simply by defeating enemies, but rather for every blow you land. So you actually get less of a reward for one-shotting an enemy than you do just punching it repeatedly.
It kind of reminds me of the weird Golden Axe scoring system where like to get the best score, you have to be constantly like thwacking people over the head again and again and again.
And then you have to waste your magic
A+++.
kill them when they're dead to get the best scores.
That actually does bring me to something they did fit about the sequel. I'm not sure how much I should talk about that one, since I haven't really played this a lot, but in that one you're rewarded actually for overkilling enemies, and unlike Golden Axe, you're actually given your magic back for successful combos or overkilling enemies.
And I was going to say it reminds me a little bit of how the infamous Final Fantasy II, where you mostly just level up by repeatedly hitting enemies and not getting any actual experience points. Or you got actually points from hitting your own party members, so it's a sort of bad pathway of grinding that... Like, I remember you said you actually ground up most of your character's power within, like, just the first area. Or
there's this weird exploitable touch where the enemies closest to the very first save point on either character's route will drop an item that will permanently raise one of your stats by 5 points, and you can just keep fighting it, going to the shop, leaving to reload the area, then fighting it again.
Yeah, that's not a great game where you can just potentially just kind of drift off into Lotus Land in the first area and not really go any farther than that. But I am going to admit, I think I kind of like the weird sort of colorful, hazy forest area the most out of anywhere else you go in the game.
The weird fall atmosphere is probably and the strange bone structures or shells, I'm not sure what they are, those probably are the most original looking graphical element of the game.
Yeah, but then after the first area, it just evolves into a set of really generic dungeons. I was only kind of able to tell the Fire Cavern apart from all the others. Well, I guess there's an Ice Cavern, there's a laboratory. I don't know.
This game is very visually early PlayStation 2. You know, there's very little lighting, there's very little texture differentiation, it's all kind of flat, it's not very exciting to look at. You're not playing this game for its looks, and you don't really want to play this game for its gameplay, and you especially don't want to play it for the music.
Yeah.
The music.
We gotta consider this was like a launch game for the PS2. It was either gonna be this or Fantavision, let's be honest.
Wait, I recall before the recording Gunheart, you actually found something out that Evergrace was intended to be a late PS1 game instead and just kind of got bumped up.
No, it was actually apparently meant for both consoles to be released side by side.
Huh. Well,
Also, as for that soundtrack, it is Kota Hoshino, who is mainly from Software's composer for just about everything besides the Souls series, making weird vocal noises, really, really repetitive vocal noises.
it sounds like avant-garde, new age hippie BS, but even worse somehow. I know Cal kept mocking it in. How'd that go?
If I were to put my finger on the biggest problem, it would be the fact that each track is so short before it loops.
Oh, I didn't realize that, but it is incredibly inane and repetitive, and honestly, I kind of wish...
Because it really is, like 4 or 5 bars long, and it's just...
Yeah.
Wait, I'll be in the basement.
That's the music, and it will do that non-stop.
I forgot to mention, to go back to the story briefly, I could actually see a bit where this was kind of... Okay, so Shadow Tower, I did the whole post-apocalyptic thing on a small scale, but I could really see where, in some ways, this game was like the Proto-Souls and having a whole kingdom be condemned. But at the same time, one of the big things that really shows that they had no idea what they were doing is that your reward for getting every piece of gear in the game is an 8-page summary of the game's plot. Like, you cannot actually tell what... And they already knew you couldn't tell what the game's plot would be, so they had to have extra files spelling it out for you.
Well, you know, that's, I guess that's From's style of not giving you the straight story and just kind of leaving it out there in vague bits and pieces for you to explore, but I imagine the lore is nowhere near as fascinating as Souls.
But like I said, I normally am okay with that, but it's the distance of that unlockable that I really find mind-boggling. It's like normally you can tell it's a deliberate touch. Here it feels like they realized themselves that the plot made no sense and needed to spell it out for you.
That's actually one of the core issues, I think, with the whole game, is that most of From's titles, you can feel like, even when it's broken or weird, you're like, I think they did that deliberately because it works with the rest of this. And this game, it feels like they dropped the ball the most, and it's like, well, that wasn't very interesting. Cool, I guess did they do that deliberately? That's also boring. Why is it really linear? Is that why?
Maybe what they did deliberately is realizing that the PS2's launch sucked, so they didn't really aim high this time. Until, like, I don't know, I guess they wanted to put something out to hold whoever over until they made Armored Core 2, which is a legitimately darn good game. So,
well, this game, I think this period of time From were trying to get themselves into a more marketable position. They were trying to tone down the challenge of their games, try and make them more accessible, because that's what Evergrace has all over it. It is mostly a pretty easy game to get into from like a playing sense, and I think that around this time they thought, if we make it like a Squaresoft game, if we make it like an anime sort of game, we'll get more people to buy it, and the Americans will buy it, and we'll do a good localization. We'll get some company that no one's ever heard of that doesn't exist yet, and they can do it. And then we'll have a good game, and people will buy it, and we'll get a lot of money. And
actually, just like correction, each tech had been localizing the games since the first Armored Core expansion.
Right, but this one...
Oh, wait, since since I think Kingsfield 2 or 3, I can't...
It's the first one that had vocals, because the vocals are very often.
No, Armored Core had full voice acting as well.
So they basically just somehow really dropped the ball.
Yep. Eternal Wing also has full voice acting, and it is substantially better than what's in this one.
Oh yeah, I guess they didn't, this was around the time when video game voice acting was starting to step up a little bit because Metal Gear Solid raised the bar, but it's not great here. I mean, it's pretty, like, mediocre to passable stuff for the most part. Except the voice of the female lead, Charlene, is worlds below the others, and I don't know what the hell they were going for with her. She sounds like Little Orphan Annie trying to line read for a Lars von Trier play or something like that. I don't know how to characterize it. It's just bad. Ugh.
But
boy.
On the subject of Metal Gear Solid, so where do we want to rank this one? Directly below Metal Gear Solid? I think so.
Well, it's probably going to end up below Metal Gear Solid, I'll give you that.
I am not laying this thing going higher than Mega Man Zero 2.
I was thinking like around Riven, but that's about right too.
Riven is much better than this thing. I don't know what you guys were on when you winked it that low.
Yeah, we keep getting shit to it nowadays. I warned everyone else, damn it. I mean,
Then why'd you rank it so low, Mr. Riven and Lover?
Oh, shut up. You were the one who wanted to bring it lower than I did when we got to the freaking thing.
I don't remember that, and I will deny it unless someone can prove otherwise. Let's have a look at the New Zealand story. I think this one, the New Zealand story is a little bit better. Just a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, we did kind of lowball that one, but I found it a really frustrating game in the long run, so, I was a little disappointed by how that one turned out. But it's quality enough. They put effort into. Not to say that Evergrace is lacking in effort, but it's just there's no reason to play this.
Places. That's
There's no reason to play this when Kingsfield 2 and 3 are much better games, a little bit more esoteric in appeal, but.
And if you need to have an easy version of Kingsfield, there's already Eternal Wing.
Yeah, that was also an early PS. What was it, early PS2 or late PS1? I can't remember anymore.
Early PS2.
It was one of the really early PS2 titles.
The main reason you play this one is if you want to see a very specific point for From Software between when they made Kingsfield and when they made Demon and Dark Souls. Like, this is getting closer to Dark Souls than Kingsfield, but it's not all the way there yet, and you'd be much better off playing the Souls games or the Fields games for whatever fix you're particularly looking for.
Yeah, definitely. I found it curious, though, that it took them 9 years from here to make Demon Souls, and the lion's share of games they made throughout last decade was Armored Core. I guess,
they were waiting for technology to catch up so that they could have always online mode and have people trick you on the ground.
Wow, that's... whether or not they're actually aiming for that actually seems like a viable theory.
It's kind of weird that they only made one more Kings of Field between...
But okay, so back on our Evergrace train. Let me push it a little lower because no one said that they don't want to put it lower. Let's look at a terrible-ish game. Let's look at Survival Arts.
Oh boy, I honestly do like that game because it's bad. It's a real kusoge, and I like fighting games that are weird, and,
I'd put below Fantasy World Dizzy myself.
Ooh, that's actually a pretty decent placement. I mean, Dizzy...
I can argue that too much.
Yeah, Dizzy has effort put into it, but, it has more...
It has the excuse of being a Spectrum game in the 80s. This one is arguably a bit less excusable, even if it was a PlayStation 2 game for the launch.
Yeah, it failed to top SSX as the reigning champ of day one PlayStation 2 titles. So, Evergrace is... I mean, I don't know if I could really call it a disappointment, because From was still semi-obscure-ish back then. Like, they had a cult following, but they didn't really super explode until the Souls
I think
series.
It would probably be a disappointment if you were a From Software fan, because you...
it would.
Think of all the Kingsfield fans out there and think of the next RPG from Software.
And I keep underestimating Kingsfield. I'm sorry, I really do like those games. It's been a while since I played any, but it's a really much more entrancing series of games that just their atmosphere and mood is so dark and fascinating and morbid. None of that is in Evergrace. It's too light for my taste, and I can appreciate if they want to make a lighter-hearted episode, but the effort just is limp, all in all.
It actually is pretty morbid. It's just such a mood dissonance that it doesn't really come across.
Yeah, no, it's just too foobar. I mean, the big bad Morpheus is this really googly-eyed old wizard whose eyes just, like... are they trying to be serious with this weirdo? Like, what the hell, man? You'd have to see it for yourself. Between Fantasy World Dizzy and Last Battle, if that's where Gunheart says it goes, I'm willing to trust him completely.
I'm also completely okay with that.
I could easily keep putting it down the list, but I haven't even heard of some of these games, so it's
Trust me,
it's
like
gonna-
Evergrace is probably not so bad to go a little lower. It's got. If you had played this game when it was new and you were like, I want a lightweight RPG-like thing, you probably would have been okay with it. It's just the rigors of time have not been kind to Evergrace.
The problem is that it actually is lost in similar action RPGs on the PlayStation. Or did the Dreamcast have any action RPGs? I can't recall.
Shoot, probably. That one game based off of Berserk, did that count? Or is that just more of a straight-up action game? I'm not sure. It probably did, but...
I'm sure there are probably better games on the Dreamcast, so that if you want your fantasy hack and slashing.
Well, I will say, at least in the case of Evergrace, I think that its sequel, Forever Kingdom, actually does retroactively prove that it did have actually some of the skeleton work in there for what could have potentially been a good game. I mean, Forever Kingdom's not super great, but it's playable, it's reasonably entertaining, it's a lot better than Evergrace, but still kind of takes its atmosphere, and it made the shopkeeper a lot more horrifying. So Evergrace isn't, like, totally bankrupt of effort, it just feels like there was so much more that should have been done to it to make it actually entertaining for the masses.
There wasn't, and now we're done with it.
Thank goodness. By the grace of God it goes.